How's it going, guys, and welcome back to my ultimate Zane guide. Today we are taking a look at Zane's other two skill trees, his green and orange trees, whereas the other two are more of just his damage and DPS. These two are his utility and sort of what ends up defining your build more so. If you want something more sort of niche and unique, these are the trees that you are going to spec more into. So we will start off with probably the least used of the two, his green tree. So of course with the green tree we have the barrier action skill. Zane deploys a barrier that blocks all incoming projectiles. You can pick this up with F or G depending on what you have it on, and it will move around in front of you. All projectiles that fire through the barrier are also amped, doing more damage. So the two skills that are most often used is Charge Relay and All-Rounder. Charge Relay, whenever Zane or an ally touches the barrier, they can increase movement speed and reload speed for a few seconds. This is kind of just a quick little movement speed buff. It's not active most of the time, but it is the best option that we have here most of the time. Then we have All-Rounder, where Zane's barrier becomes a complete dome, and when he picks it up, it completely protects himself from incoming damage. Nanites are some shite, which is health regen, reload speed, and shield recharge delay whenever there is an ally or himself near his barrier, which can be pretty nice. Retaliation, Zane and allies near the barrier gain increased gun damage for a few seconds after the barrier takes damage. This is a pretty good skill, however, it isn't often gotten because you don't usually go too far down into this tree, but we'll get to that. And finally, we have Deterrence Field. Enemies that touch the barrier take shock damage and are staggered. I have a theory that you can probably do some funny stuff with this. Probably nothing like amazing, but I feel like with action stole damage boosts and such, you could probably just run through some enemies. However, this is not a very useful skill in most cases. Immediately right off the bat, these first three skills are pretty meh. I mean, these are usually just taken to get down the tree. We have action stored cooldown rate based on the percentage of your shield remaining. We have max shield percentage, and we have shield recharge rate and delay buffs. Now, some of these are more beneficial to specific builds than others, but really overall, kind of just pick whatever you want to get down. After that, we have the most useful and versatile skill in this tree, Brain Freeze. Whenever Zane stores a critical hit on an enemy, there's a chance that they will be slowed. This effect stacks until they are frozen. This is really strong with multi-pellet weapons. Many different shotguns can just instantly freeze something. Things like the Light Show are really strong with this, especially when you combine it with Playing Dirty in his blue tree. This skill is just really good. It helps you freeze things really quickly, and of course, you're Zane, you want things frozen. This skill is picked up in almost every single build, especially the ones that use Barrier, because that helps us get down to All-Rounder. Stiff Upper Lip is the first of many purely defensive skills that are in this tree. Of course, Borderlands 3, along with every other Borderlands game, defense is not usually that great. These games have always sort of devolved into kill things before you can be killed. Of course, if you have a lot of health regen, or if you have a lot of lifesteal, then that is good defense. However, damage reduction, damage resistance, all that sort of stuff never really works too well, and it kind of just becomes a battle of can you regen or lifesteal for long enough until you kill something. So a lot of the defense skills here are not good. Rise to the occasion, speaking of health regeneration, is health regeneration. It increases based on how low Zane's shield is. Now this is actually not a bad skill at all. The only problem is we have salvation already. So when we already have salvation, Rise to the occasion isn't that amazing because we're already lifestealing to full HP every time we shoot an enemy. But you are going to need points somewhere to move down this tree if you want to go deeper, and this would probably be where you'd want to put them. And then we have Distributed Denial. This is a disappointing skill. Zane's barrier gains the effects of his currently equipped shield. Additionally, shield effects are applied to all allies near the barrier. Bonuses to Zane are reduced. This skill just doesn't really work too well with a lot of shields, unfortunately. You can do kind of some interesting things with Nova shields. Remember back in the day, it was a huge thing to just put on a Nova shield and nuke things with it by breaking the shield. But at this point, I don't really think there's ever a reason to pick this up. Maybe early game while you're playing with friends, it could be a good kind of supportive ability, but just for yourself, there's very few things that interact with this favorably. So it's never super worth it to actually get. I might even make a separate video just about this skill. That's something that might be coming in the future. Next, we have Really Expensive Jacket. Elemental status effects applied to Zane have a reduced duration. This goes really well with Futility Belt. Zane gains resistance to non-elemental damage. These two skills sound pretty good. I mean, status effect dots are really annoying, huge pain in the ass, and these can give you really good resistances to them. Aside from of course lifesteal, these are probably the two best defense stills that you can pick up for Zane. This does give you really good resistance against dots because Futility Belt transfers that damage to non-elemental, and then you gain resistance to that. It isn't worth going into this tree just for these, but if you're this deep anyways and have the points to spare, they can be worth grabbing. Best Serve Cold. Whenever Zane kills an enemy, they create a Cryonova, dealing damage to all nearby enemies. This skill has a short cooldown. This is actually a really good skill. It gets Mayhem scaling, which means that as you move up in the Mayhem levels, this does more and more damage, much like Clone and Iron Bear and any sort of action skill. This can actually be pretty fucking nuts. It's just a shame that it's locked so far down into this tree. You do really have to be investing a lot into probably one of Zane's worst overall trees to get use out of this. But if you are doing it, this is a really good pickup. If Nerves of Steel, Zane gains increasing accuracy and handling. The longer his shield is full, the greater the bonus. This is one of those skills that it's okay. I mean, if you need to put the point somewhere, it's an okay pickup. It's kind of just not a good enough bonus for the effort that goes into keeping your shield up. Even with barrier, your shield can drop, especially to dot effects. You do need to be very mindful of barrels and splash damage and such, or you just lose all 15 of your stacks. This skill is okay. That's about it. It's an okay skill. Crushment gives you lifesteal whenever you damage a frozen enemy. This is alright. You already have a shit ton of lifesteal from putting 1 point in sustainment, but yeah, I guess you can also put a single point here to get more lifesteal that you don't need. I guess if you don't have sustainment for whatever reason, then this could be good. Sustainment is just lifesteal, only contingent on killing an enemy, or more accurately, activating an action skill. Refreshment, you need to have something frozen first, which isn't a difficult task for Zane, but sustainment is just so much easier. And then we have Calm Cool Collected, probably the single best skill in this tree. Whenever Zane freezes an enemy, his shield instantly begins recharging. If Zane's shields are already full, he regenerates health. If Zane's health is already full, his action skill cooldowns and durations are immediately reset. This was how, before the Seeing Dead, Zane would keep his action skills up all the time. As long as you were freezing enemies, your action skills would always be up. This skill is really good. It has just sort of been power crept out of viability. There's easier ways to keep your action skills up now. This is not necessary, but there are some builds that do function where this is better. If you are using, for example, a conductor, then you do need to have Calm Cool Collected. Otherwise, you're never going to have your action skills up and you're never going to get proper bonuses out of the conductor. And then finally, our capstone, Confident Competence. While Zane's shields are active, he gains increased gun damage and accuracy. This bonus is based on the amount of shields he has. The more percent full, the greater the bonus. This is up to a 40% gun damage boost and a 33% accuracy boost. For being so far down in this tree and so far hidden away, this is such a small gun damage boost, it's not worth it. This gun damage boost should be way higher for how far down you have to actually go into this tree to get it. But if you have already invested the points to get down this far, you might as well pick it up because, oh boy, 40% gun damage. Onto the orange tree, of course, we have the Digiclone as our action skill. Zane spawns a Digiclone of himself. Clone stays in place, but it will distract enemies and shoot at them. Pressing whatever button that you have it assigned to while the clone is active causes Zane and the clone to swap places. This swap has a very brief cooldown. Then have Binary System for our first augment. Whenever Zane swaps, Zane and the clone create a Cryonova around themselves. We have Schadenfreude, the German S word. Whenever the clone takes damage, Zane's shield is restored by a portion of that damage. This can actually be a pretty good survivability tool, since your clone does actually take a lot of damage, but definitely isn't a necessary augment. Doppelbanger, hold down F or G to end the action skill early. When Zane's action skill is ended, the clone explodes, dealing splash damage to all nearby enemies. You can use this as a nuke. You just place this in a group of enemies and then bomb them. This does actually do some pretty solid damage if you build for action skill damage, but more so what this is used for is easy repositioning of Zane's clone, and also what it used to be used for before Zane had a better way of activating ASEs was to activate ASE anointments. While that is definitely an outdated method, there is still a few situations where it can be good, but Doppelbanger as a whole I think is a must-use augment just because of the ability to reposition the clone whenever you want to without having to swap places with it. which one's real, which I don't think is very necessary. This makes enemies even more likely to target the clone for a few seconds after it's summoned and after swapping places. This already happens, like most enemies will just target the clone, so this augment is kind of overkill. And finally, we have digital distribution. If Zane takes health damage while the clone is active, a portion of that damage is shared to the clone instead. This isn't a terrible skill. The only thing you kind of need to keep in mind is the clone has way less survivability than Zane himself does. It is better if you actually end up just tanking as much as you can for your clone. So I personally would avoid these two augments and just stick to swapping around between these three depending on which one that you want. On to our actual stills, we will start with Synchronicity, which is a 20% gun damage boost per active action still, meaning that if you have 2 action stills active, you are getting 40% gun damage. Of course, this isn't a hell of a lot of gun damage, and seeing as this is only gun damage, I usually only put points into this if I need to move further down the tree, as there are much better stills than this. Communitas, Zane and his Digiclone gain increased magazine size, and that's about it. For 3 points and a 25% magazine size increase, I put this into every single build that I can. I think this is such a good fucking skill. Because Zane gets so much fire rate and reload speed, it really decreases the downtime between your firing. So anytime I have any sort of extra points, I will put them into Premunitus. Along with that, if I have the points, I will usually put 2 into Borrowed Time, and then 1 into Duct Tape mod. Borrowed Time is action still duration for every active action still. This works with every single one of Zane's action stills, including Mantis Cannon. Although Mantis Cannon isn't a active action still, when you fire it, you do gain a stack of Borrowed Time for a brief period of time. So you can actually stack it up to 5 times, meaning if you have Mantis Cannon and an active action still, you can actually stack that duration on that active one and keep it up longer. And the reason I really like putting a point into Duct Tape mod is because, well, yes, being able to shoot grenades sometimes is nice. Mostly, Zane gaining immunity from his own guns and grenades is incredible, and you only need a single point in this still to activate that. This is definitely one that I would pick up in every single build that you can. And moving from a still to pick up in every single build that you can to one that you should never pick up. Fractal Frags. The Digiclone throws a copy of Zane's current grenade mod when it is first activated. If the Digiclone is killed, it drops a free grenade. As a kill still, killing an enemy while the Digiclone is active gives the clone a chance to throw a grenade. Reason that I would never take this still, just simply because it lowers the overall DPS of your clone. When the clone throws this grenade, it has a pretty long wind-up period and like a sort of cooldown period before it can start firing again. By pretty long, I do mean just like a few seconds, but that is a few seconds that your clone is not firing. So I really would not recommend using this still ever. And now we have Donnybrook, which honestly I think is Synchronicity, but better. They kill still. Whenever Zane kills an enemy, he and his Digiclone receive increased gun damage and health regeneration for a few seconds. This effect stacks twice. So already, this is a 30% gun damage boost for not only you, but your Digiclone as well, along with giving you and your Digiclone more survivability. Digiclone struggles with survivability, so this is a incredible boost, especially because of how this works into Digiclone's damage as well. It's already getting a shit ton of damage from Mayhem Scaling. This 30% gun damage is really good. Along with that, unlike Synchronicity, this is also a kill still, meaning that it gets boosted by Seeing Red, Death Follows Close, Seeing Dead class mods, Spy class mod, any sort of kill still boost also boosts Donnybrook. So because it is important to this and a few other stills in this tree, this is Digiclone's damage formula. I'm not going to go too in-depth in it right now. It's base damage times various stills times a few other bonuses. I will be making a separate video in this series entirely dedicated to Clone's damage. Now, even if I'm not using Clone, I do like putting extra points into this tree. Usually, again, Premunitus, a little bit in Borrowed Time, 1 in Duct Tape mod, and then I will dump any extra leftover points into Donnybrook. Usually it's like another 2 points. Mostly just because I like the health regeneration. The gun damage for just yourself is kind of meh, but the health regen is kind of nice. It's a really easy way to get a little bit of health regeneration, and I do find that it can help with when you get health gated. It gives you a little bit of a buffer period for you to start lifestealing again to get back up. Builds where I don't have Donnybrook, I do feel like I go down a little bit more often. And then we have Quick Breather. Whenever Zane swaps with his clone, his shield immediately begins recharging and restores some health to his clone. This is the biggest way that you keep your clone alive. If you are not swapping places with your clone, he will die. So you want to always be paying attention to his health, and if he gets low, you want to take his place and give him a little bit of health. And moving straight into some survivability from clone to survivability to Zane, pressing whichever button you have clone on during Fight for Your Life. If your digiclone is active, it will destroy the clone and immediately give you a second win. Zane really struggles to get second wins on his own, so this can really get you out of some tough situations. It is definitely worthwhile to grab it if you are running digiclone. We then have Supersonic Man. This is a movement speed bonus that stacks for every active action skill, so up to a 24% bonus. This is really strong, as you will probably have violent momentum and violent violence, as every Zane build should, so this is technically a damage boost while also giving you more mobility. In this tier we also have Pocket full of grenades, but I will come back to why I think that this is an important skill. For now, I will just mention it is a kill skill. It gives you grenade regeneration. I usually put a point or two into here. I don't think I've ever put 3. 3 is definitely a little overkill. But here we have Boom Enhance. Whenever Zane summons his digiclone, it consumes up to 3 grenades. For every grenade consumed, the digiclone gains increased gun damage, max health, fire rate, reload speed, and duration. And this is exactly why I like Pocket full of grenades. 1 or 2 points in here, you will always have enough grenades by the time that your digiclone dies to enhance it again by the time you spawn it again. This is a very strong skill. It is a huge buff all around to your digiclone. You always want this in every single build where you are using digiclone. The skills you don't really ever want is Trick of the Light and Like a Ghost. These skills are just kind of useless. Like a Ghost, Zane and his digiclone gain a chance to ignore bullets. This chance is increased for a few seconds after activating an action skill. This effect stacks. I have never noticed a difference in my survivability when using Like a Ghost. This still sounds kind of cool, but the ignoring bullet chance is pretty damn low, and it doesn't really matter in the long run when if you get hit by maybe 1 or 2 bullets in the end game, it doesn't matter. You're probably gonna lose a lot of your health anyways. Trick of the Light is an additional 45% bonus cryo damage on enemies that are not targeting Zane. The skill isn't necessarily bad, because there are a lot of enemies that will be targeting your clone, but it's also not really worth it. We can already get 100% bonus cryo damage from just ASEs or Sentinel Cryo. I don't really find this skill to ever be super necessary. I suppose if you're running a build where you don't have easy access to ASEs or you don't have easy access to Sentinel Cryo, then it could be okay just to get some of that cryo damage going. I just find that it is a little bit inconsistent, so I don't tend to pick this up. And finally, one of Zane's strongest skills ever, Double Barrel. The clone is equipped with a copy of Zane's current weapon when activated. Swapping places with the clone causes Zane and his clone to gain increased gun damage. Not only is this a 25% gun damage boost, which is kind of meh for Zane himself, it's pretty good for the clone though, but the important part of this is you can give the digiclone any gun that you want. Any gun that you want, any single gun. If you are using clone, you absolutely need this skill. Clone on its own does do good damage, just with his digiclone dull assault rifle. He does decent enough damage. But with this, you can give him like top meta gear. You can really pump him up, especially if you give him a splash gun and you have ASE splash on your weapons. That actually affects digiclone. It is one of 2 anointments that affects digiclone. So giving him splash damage and then boosting that by 125%, shit gets nuts. But yeah, that about does it for Zane's more utility focused trees. As I said, these are the trees that are less damage focused and more focused in actually carving out the niche for your build and what you want to do with your build. Blue and purple are the basis building blocks of any single build, whereas green and orange are the defining features of what makes it what it is. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I hope to see you in the next one.